Good morning and welcome to City Talk. It's a weekly program that we produce here at the city. It's a radio program, it's a podcast, it's a television program. It's a great opportunity for us to visit with city people, to tell you what's going on and just bring you up to date with what's happening. And this week, I've got a program full of information. We have a program that we do each year at this time at the start of school. We have Officer Sophie Martinez with the Community Outreach and Support Division of the Waco Police Department. We also have Kelly Crane, who is certainly no hidden person behind the scenes now with all the COVID stuff going on, but with the Waco McLennan County Public Health District. We'll be talking about going back to school, what you need to get done, and I know school's starting basically this week when we're airing this. But anyway, Sophie, I want to start with you because, safety of kids and then us as drivers, we all need to realize the fact that in whatever fashion, school is starting.
Yes.
A lot of people are going to be staying at home and virtual. But there's still going to be people going out and having the in-person learning experience at the various campuses throughout our city. Talk about some of the concerns that you as a Waco Police outreach and community support person does.
Well, this goes mostly to all citizens. Even though we have COVID, like you said, we still have kids that are still going to be going to school physically. So those school zones are going to be active. Not sure when they're going to start turning them on. They might turn them on a day or two before school starts just to start getting people used to it again because they did shut down early this year. So we've been without school zones for quite a while, longer than usual. But anyway, we need to start looking for those school zones wherever you may live or whatever route you take to work. Make sure there's no new school zone that has been posted. By where I live, there's been a school zone, but there hasn't been the pole with the light, and now there's one. So it's more obvious. But again, sometimes, our mind's on something else, and we don't notice these things, especially if they're new, like a new stop sign. And so before school starts, just those routes you take to work, routes you take the kids to school, any school zones in your area where you live or work, just make sure that you know where they're all at so that you're mindful of that when school is starting. And be mindful to follow that school zone and stay off your phone or any distractors while the school zones are on before school and after school.
Let's talk a little bit right there because we're trying to get everybody to school, but we're going to talk away two different things. Buses are running.
Yes.
And so talk about what we as drivers are supposed to do regarding buses and respecting that. And then we're going to turn to Kelly and let her kind of talk about how we can protect our children on board a bus in the COVID-19 time we're in.
Right. And overall, you see a school bus, especially during the school season, just be cautious. Just use caution at any time you see a school bus because you never know. Just always be cautious, especially if a bus slows down or stops for any reason, even though the little stop sign doesn't come out. Just take a moment to make sure those kids are unloading because sometimes they have malfunctions and maybe that little stop sign doesn't come out. So just stop for a second, make sure no kids are unloading or no kids are loading on that bus, and just to be cautious on your end. But anytime, especially when school is starting and buses are picking up kids, after school when they're unloading kids, be mindful when that little stop sign comes out, you're supposed to come to a complete stop until that bus has unloaded all the children and that stop sign is retracted back and that school bus starts getting on its way. You are to follow, whatever that bus is doing. So you see that stop sign out, stop, because you can get cited for it.
Before we go on board the bus with Kelly's information, talk to us about what the kids are supposed to do and be trained and told as far as their safety once the bus while they're waiting for the bus to come there.
Yes.
So predators don't drive up and try to encourage them to get in the car and ride with them or whatever. Talk a little about some of that safety.
Right. So going back a little bit, so the kids, talk to your kids about when they're getting off the bus. Make sure that they look both ways. If they have to cross the street to get over to their side of the road, make sure they look both ways before they cross any street. Again, some drivers don't pay attention. So also tell your kids they must do their part in making sure no cars are coming because we don't want them to get hurt. Now, when kids are in this bus stops waiting for the bus to come pick them up for school, again, talk to your kids about any strangers coming up and approaching them and asking them for a ride or asking them for directions or trying to lure them close to their vehicle, what have you. Talk to your kids about what you want them to do. Of course, you have to make that plan according to your child, because every child understands things differently. So if you have a family member or a neighbor or somebody that lives in the neighborhood that you trust, that you want your child to run to that house to call the police, have them do that, or have them get on their cell phone, or whatever plan you make. But talk to those kids about staying away from any unfamiliar vehicles or people that come up to the school zone if they try to lure them or any other child into their vehicles as well.
It's so sad, the fact that you all spend a lot of time talking stranger danger training inside the schools, and just making sure that the kids are safe, because there are predators out there that are wanting to take advantage of the situation. It's so sad and that type of thing.
Yes.
So, but anyway, being alert to what your children are doing, and don't question the fact that they may know, go over it again with them. Now's the time to refresh their memory of what their responsibility is and how they must be accountable to you. Or somebody, like Sophie said, a neighbor or somebody that's trusted in your neighborhood, if you're not able to be there waiting for them at the bus stop.
And they may roll their eyes because like, oh, I know. Well, that's good that they know, but let's go ahead and let's go over it again just to refresh, all the rules and the protocol as to what you want them to do in case they're in a situation like that.
Now, Kelly, we're going to get the kids on board the bus now, okay? And now we're talking about social distancing, masks, and things like that. What are you as a health district representative recommending to the schools, the bus drivers, the parents, and everybody regarding getting them to school? Then we'll talk about getting to school in a minute on board a bus.
And the first thing, everyone uses different bus service. Some may hire a bus service or they run it on their own. So start with talking with your school about what their plan is for social distancing and how they plan to enforce that, particularly with children and on a bus. Talk to them about what is the plan for the bus. Again, the thing about the 6 foot distance is that's how far my breath can travel, and it can travel and land on you. So wearing a mask, something like this, is really just more effective than just covering your cough and sneezes. It's continually of covering your face and covering your breath so you're not spreading it. So that's important. The 6 foot distance is important. And then respecting everybody's space, learning about respecting each other's space. And, of course, school buses, we've all had to ride school buses, and those bus drivers are tough, and they don't want any horseplay on that bus. So you've got to reinforce that. When you're on the bus, no horseplay, keep to yourself, be respectful of others. And
really yelling and screaming and talking, because the louder you yell, the more that you're putting out what you put out.
Exactly. So really, part of that goes with all of the things that you've taught your kids. Really, public health in a lot of ways boils down to what your mother taught you. And that, of course, is cover your coughs and sneezes, wash your hands, and eat healthy. And, of course, going to that, respect your other people's space. Don't infringe on people. Don't horseplay. All of those things are really important when you're on the bus.
Well, let's get on into school, because now we're at school. And you just mentioned something about horseplay and things like that. And I remember when I was a kid, I definitely horseplayed a lot. But, let's talk about like lunchtime. And at the lunch tables and things, I'm sure the schools will provide the social distancing and things. But as far as sharing food or playing, sometimes you do, it's important that we communicate from the parent and grandparent side what our kids are expected and how they're expected to act. You can't count on the schools being the only people to lay the rules out and enforce them and everything. So it's our responsibility to do that. Talk a little bit about safety in the school that you as a health district person are recommending.
Oh, of course. And then it goes back to, we think about, what we're doing at work, when we're out and about, when with our friends and family, those things still apply in the school. And of course, that is the social distancing. And, talk with your school first about how are they going to do that within the classroom? How are they going to do that with your class? If your kid is old enough to have class changes, how are they going to do that? How are they going to do that in the cafeteria? How are they going to do it in those indoor spaces? What is PE going to look like? PE, of course, is extremely important in any time period for any school to let kids rest, to let them run, to have a little time to rest their brain, to recharge. Find out about how the PE is going to work and what kind of activities they're going to do for that. So those are all really important things. And you've got to talk with each school, because what is right for a kindergartner is going to be different for a seventh grader, is going to be different for a senior in high school. So we have to be more mindful of everything we do and how germs are spread. Schools are always on the front lines of disease, whether it's, a common cold or stomach-borne illnesses or COVID or flu. So that's always an issue. Right as school starts, we suddenly see more gastrointestinal issues that pop up during school time. So be ready for that. Be mindful of that. Reinforce it with your children now more than ever. Now's not the time to be sharing food. Mm-hmm. Now is the time. Washing your hands. You taught your child that from the beginning. It's probably the first words they heard out of your mouth. You reinforce that 100% now.
And they're all probably very tired of hearing it, but it's something we cannot say enough, and it's part of it.
Exactly.
Because what we're doing now, we're getting ready to move from what we left school in April, May, or whenever we finally got away from in class time, and we're now getting ready to move them back into class atmosphere in a totally new world. Mm-hmm. And so we're going to have to, as parents, join with the teachers and administration to help educate them and get them in on the things that they're supposed to do. And I'm hoping, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's not just, COVID, of course, that is an extreme situation, and we're really hyper aware of that. But remember, it's also, again, those stomach illnesses. You don't want your kids having nausea or upset stomach. It's strep throat. You always see an increase in strep throat, in colds, just common colds, just general illness. So now more than ever, really enforce those practices with your children.
And as we're interacting in school, it always brings up the old thing that we talk about, Sophie, is bullying. Mm-hmm. And sad as it is, there are those kids that are going to try to take advantage and be bullying and things like that. You would think in an atmosphere that we're all dealing with masks and things like that, that wouldn't happen, but that is the case. So how do you tell a parent that has a child that is doing the bullying, mm-hmm. what do you tell them? Because they're going to say, "Oh, my kid wasn't bullying." What is bullying, and what should a parent be telling their children on how to not do these practices that will be interpreted or treated as bullying, which gets them into trouble?
Right, and that's the big thing. Talking to your kids, talking to the kids in general about what bullying is. It's just not physical. It can be verbal. It can be psychological. Just by what they say. It can't be just something like, your pants are ugly or your pants are old. Mm-hmm. It can be just something like, just a look.
Just a look, yeah.
Or, mm-hmm. Something like that can intimidate another child. So just, again, talking with our kids about, just things that you say, things that, your facial features, little sound effects, especially putting hands on people, can be construed as bullying, depending on what level you take it to. Same thing with social media. When we were growing up, we didn't have that issue with social media. It was physical, verbal, psychological. Now it's with social media. So, we would tell our kids, as a bullier, if you're thinking of picking on a kid because you don't like their pants, because you just don't know about them and you feel picking on them because they're different, okay, that could be considered bullying, especially if it's repetitive, and that could get you in some trouble with the school. And depending on how far you take it, it can get you in trouble, with police, and that's something parents need to think about. That sometimes when kids is at a certain age, when they take bullying to an extreme to where now it's breaking the law, okay, now parents are going to be held accountable because mm-hmm. that is your child, as to, what has occurred mm-hmm. and why has it occurred, why has it been allowed to go that far. Yeah. So it's just very important to be very honest with our kids and talking to them. One, of course, overall, it's just not good, mm-hmm. Because if you don't know somebody, if they're different from you, instead of picking on them because they're different from you, why don't you learn from them? You may wind up with a best friend instead of somebody that you're picking on. Yeah. Especially the new kids. Mm-hmm. Talk to your kids about approaching the new kids and making them feel welcome at your school. Because, I don't know if y'all have experienced that, but being new somewhere, whether it's a job, whether it's school as a kid, it's just very intimidating. And especially when nobody's coming up to you, you feel very alone and all. But when somebody does come up to you, says the first hello, it helps you start integrating into that environment and all. And so we want to teach our kids to do that. Go up to that new kid, make them feel welcome, talk to them. Hey, you need something, let me know. And then, like I said, you may wind up with a lifelong friendship.
Yeah. If you just joined us, we're visiting with Officer Sophie Martinez with the Community Outreach and Support Division of the Waco Police Department, and Kelly Crane, who is a public information specialist for the Waco-McLean County Public Health District. And one of the things you wanted to be sure we mentioned, Kelly, is the fact that we should have really been doing this a week earlier, but immunizations are extremely important, and birth certificates, which is required to be able to get into school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Immunizations are so important right now. Of course, in the spring when we were closed down, it was very difficult for people to get their immunizations. Now, pediatricians are open, doctors' offices are open. So it is really essential that you get your child's vaccinations up to date. And that, start with your pediatrician. Of course, we are offering immunizations at the health district, but it's by appointment only. Where people are used to just, I need a shot. Let's go to the health district, and maybe I'll have to wait in line, but I'll get my shot today. We can't do that anymore, so you've got to call and make an appointment. So whether it's with us, whether it's with your pediatrician, get it done now. The last thing we need in the middle of this pandemic with COVID is a measles outbreak or a mumps outbreak or flu. You can stop those by getting immunizations now.
We've got preventive things for that, and if we don't exercise and take advantage of it, but those shots and those vaccines are required, first of all. Now, you always talked about shot records. Now, who maintains the shot records if you don't have the little book or whatever it is that you have?
Absolutely. Well,
is that something you all keep on file?
We keep on file for people that we give shots to. There's also this computer system run by the state called MTRAC, and so all immunization records can go in there with the parent approval. So you have to make sure. You probably did. You may not realize it. So if you are interested in shot records, start with your pediatrician or whoever you normally go to and see if they have it. If they don't, then of course you can call the health district and we can look that up for you. But shot records are extremely important. You need those, one, to get your further shots to make sure that you are up to date, because the last thing we want to do is give you extra vaccines that your child doesn't need. We want to give them exactly what they need and not over-vaccinate them. So start with your pediatrician. Find out what your shot record is. You can get a copy of it through them. If you don't have a regular pediatrician or you're not sure where you to go, you can also call the health district and we can talk to you about that, talk you through that process, see if you're in our system and go from there. But you do need a shot record. Usually our schools are so great about notifying parents like, okay, so your child needs, 1, 2, 3 vaccines and here they are. That's usually also a good place to start. But of course, everyone is so busy. Start with who you know, start with where you normally get your shots and then go from there.
What are the ages that different immunizations are required? Because I know there's a number of years you could go without it, and I'm just fine, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't know I was supposed to have something in the 9th grade or whatever it is.
Absolutely. So start with your 4-year-olds. That's the first round of boosters. So 4-year-olds. So that group, usually by the time they're 4, they should have those 4-year-old boosters. If they miss it, we're going to find them in kindergarten. And so look at your shot records. Just because they're entering kindergarten does not mean they're going to need vaccinations. They may be already up to date. Again, look at that shot record, talk to your pediatrician. The next round of boosters is going to be 7th grade. So that's your 12-year-olds, around 12-year-olds. So you really, through that period, there's probably not any shots that you need unless it's the 4-year-olds and then those 12-year-olds. And then, of course, high school, there are some vaccinations. They're not always required, meningitis vaccinations. Again, you can look with your pediatrician to talk about that or talk to the health district. But our main audience right now is those kindergartners and those 12-year-olds. That's who's really needing back-to-school shots.
And I think it's really important to emphasize the fact that when we do have a vaccine to protect us, you mentioned measles. We don't need another outbreak of measles amongst all the COVID things. And it comes down to the flu shots. I know we're going to be talking about the flu shots in the future, but everybody this year, the health district has highly recommended everybody this year, if you didn't get it last year, get a flu shot, because we want to eliminate those other diseases and viruses that we have some control over, because we do have preventive measures on that. So That's one of them. Now talk about birth certificates, because I know
Yeah.
getting into school, and some of you all may still be looking at moving from one school district to the other because you're not happy with what they're doing for either the COVID spacing or the virtual stuff that they're offering compared to what you're doing. Or you may be moving from homeschooling to if you're making changes, you're going to have immunization records, and you're going to have a birth certificate.
Yes, absolutely.
Talk
And
about
our birth
birth certificates.
certificate is, again, another example where at the health district, it used to be first come, first served, and you could just come to the building. It's by appointment now.
Because the health district's building is closed.
The health district building is closed. We're accepting appointments, so you need to call first, make that appointment. It may take up to a week for you to get an appointment, so you want to plan ahead as soon as you start thinking about that right now. When you hear my voice, call the health district to make that appointment. You can also go to the Waco Health District website. It's part of the City of Waco website, and they have all of the applications. It's not interactive, so you have to print it out, fill it out, and then you can email it back or fax it back, and as soon as they get it, they can mail it to you. But again, it will take a little time. It's going to take planning ahead. You think about, your 16-year-olds that are wanting to get their driver's license. You need a birth certificate to get a driver's license now. So plan ahead, get ready before you have to do anything, register, get your children in school, get their driver's license. Call ahead first. Make that appointment now.
The McLennan County Public Health District is the place where you get birth certificates from. Now, if they have if they were born, the child was born outside of the McLennan County area, can they help them with that?
We sure can. We can help them with anyone that was born in the state of Texas. So if you are thinking, well, I'm closer to Temple or I'm closer to another city, you can also call them and see if they can get you an appointment or they can have a system. So you can go through Waco, McLennan County, or you can look at any of the other cities. It's kind of like driver's license, where driver's license, you have to have an appointment now. I know people that drove as far as Bastrop to get their driver's license renewed. So you can find a lot of other ways to or other organizations, but call us first because we can help you. We can get you those numbers and get you that information. So if you need a birth certificate quicker or it's easier for you to drive to another city, we can find that for you.
Okay, we've gotten the kids to school. We've gotten them eating lunch and doing their schooling and things like that. Now it's time to go home. Okay, they're going to go home either on the bus or whatever else. But Sophie, I want you to tell us now some safety measures and recommendations again when the kids get off the bus. Many of them are what are sometimes referred to as latchkey kids, where there's no parent at home. They have to go home, walk maybe a block or more or two from where their bus drops them off. Talk to me about the safety issues about youngsters going home by themselves and the safety protections you all recommend.
So right now is a good time to practice with your kids their route that they're going to take if they're walking home to and from school, an alternate route. So if something's going on in that primary route, that they have a secondary route that they can take. Let's say somebody's bullying them, every day somebody's yelling at them and they don't feel comfortable. Okay, let's find a different way to go home to avoid that while we take care of that issue. And then talk to them, as they're walking home, not talking to strangers, not walking so close to the road, paying attention to vehicles, walking on the side of the road where you can see vehicles coming so that you can take immediate action if you need to jump off, if a car tends to sway into off-road. Have safe havens along the way. Again, if you have family that lives nearby, if you have neighbors that you trust, around your kids and all, make a plan with them. Hey, if my kid, something happens while they're walking home from school, can they come to your house? And can, so that way you can contact me and then we can take care of whatever the issue is. Once they get home, okay, as soon as they get it home, get in the house, lock the door, and then tell them, okay, this is what you're going to do. You're going to start your homework or whatever plan you have for them once they're inside their home. Depending on how old they are you going to allow them to use the microwave, the stove? If so, are we going to practice that? How do we use it? What's the temperatures that we use for this, and this? Okay, if something catches on fire, what are things that we can do? Do they know how to use a fire extinguisher if they need to, if they're older? And again, you have to go with your kid, how old they are, how quickly they learn, and then have a list of numbers to call in case of an emergency. And then, of course, if they have a cell phone, making sure that there's a charger, that they always have that phone charged. So if they need to call, what to do if somebody comes knocking to the door, what are your rules for them answering the door? If, let's say, somebody's breaking into the house, okay, what is a plan for that? Do they run out the back door? Do you want them to hide? What do you want them to do? Many people are not familiar that with Waco, you can actually text 911. So you can let your kids know that if they text 911 in Waco, they'll get an operator that'll text back to them, so they can have an open dialogue if they're hiding in the closet or wherever. If they don't want who's ever in the house to hear them, they can text and all. But remember, tell your kids if they have to call 911, they have to call any emergency department for any reason, they need to know what's their name, what's their address. That is so important because so many kids don't know their address. They just know they live in a white house on the corner. Make sure they know their house number, their street name. Make sure they know your name. Make sure they know how to get a hold of you, your phone number, because they may just have it on their phone texting you and they don't have that. They don't think of learning that number. Make sure they learn that number. What is your work number? They have all that information so that when they're talking to the operator and the operator is asking them all these questions, they have that information available to them because we can help them better.
That's so important, and I'm glad you mentioned that because in today's world, when we don't have landlines as it is, and the 911 automatically would tell you where the address is.
Yes.
With a cell phone, you don't know what that is because
Yes.
and I want to make sure that you do have some form of communication.
And make sure your kids know your name.
Yes.
A lot of times kids, they just know you by mom and dad.
That's right.
That's
sad.
It's true. It's true. You don't think about that.
Yeah, where do you work? Where does mom and dad work? So if they can't get a hold of you on your cell phone, because maybe at work sometimes you're not allowed to use your cell phone, where do mom and dad work? So that way they can contact that business right away.
And if there's no phone, there's no cell phone, which are situations like that, develop a plan. Just like Miss Sophie has said, you got to have a plan. You got to give them the options ahead of time, what they do in a panic situation when things are...
Yeah, run out the back, run out your garage.
Exactly.
And where do you go? Have a place for them to go, not just run out.
Yeah.
Have, again, if you have neighbors that you trust with your kids, make a plan with them. Hey, can my kid come if they have an emergency situation at the house, or can they call you?
It just helps to have somebody that they can check in with,
Yes.
or that will check with them. And whether it's a grandparent or they call them or whatever it is, it's just vital that we plan ahead and think for the bad things. And that's the sad thing. And that's what we're talking about in this whole program, is getting prepared for and ready for the things that are out there.
And
you mentioned the
having them
cooking
ready.
part of it. Some people say, I don't know how to call 911. Well, that's pretty simple, you would think, but make sure they understand that's a number, 911.
Right.
Oh, okay. And those are just the things. And knowing, like, as far as cooking, have them prepared food, maybe snacks that don't require heating, that don't require temperature that could be burning them, or things like that.
Some first aid in case they have younger siblings to look after if they're choking.
Yep.
I mean, they're never too young to learn CPR, Heimlich maneuver, and things like that. But again, 911, always important to know.
Well, and don't ever be hesitant to call 911.
Yes.
All police and fire people will always tell you, please call us. They'd much rather get there and find nothing rather than have to come in an emergency response and take care of something that's a disaster that's not really good.
Right.
Anything else? We got about a minute left that you want to make sure we cover. Have we talked about everything?
Immunizations, birth certificates. Call the health district first.
There you go. And Sophie, you've gotten us to and from safely, and all we have to do is just pay attention to this information.
Talk to your kids. Talk to your kids and
Communicate.
ensure they understand that information.
Absolutely.
And keep that line of communication open with them.
Absolutely. Officer Sophie Martinez with the Community Outreach and Support Division of the Waco Police Department. Always great information you share with us.
Thank you.
And Kelly Crane, who is certainly not a person that's not known in the community now with all the COVID stuff. And we hope that things will turn back to normal somewhat soon. And but the number one thing you want to remind everybody now is to get your flu shots when those become available.
Absolutely. 100%.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for being with us this
You're
morning.
welcome.
Thank you.
We hope you'll join us again next week for more information about the City of Waco on City Talk. This program is produced by the Municipal Information Department of the City of Waco and is provided as a public service by this station.